Nuclear Throne has over 120 different weapons in the game for you to find, all of which are available at different points in the run. Even so, every character starts with just a revolver at the beginning of each run, but of course, there are ways around this. Of course, I'm talking about golden guns. Golden weapons can be found in a handful of ways, usually coming from YV's mansion, which is accessed by smacking this golden car on 3-1 with a screwdriver. All of the golden weapons from the mansion can also be found naturally after looping, and there are even a handful of golden guns that are only available post-loop. 6 from the mansion and 6 from post-loop adds up to 14 golden guns in total, and wait, 14? Now, I'm no mathematician, but I think that only adds up to 12, so where are the other two? Enter the golden disc gun and the golden nuke launcher, what I consider to be the 2 rarest weapons in the game. The only way to obtain these is by playing on hard mode, and to find one naturally on 7.2 or later. Surely it can't be that bad to find them though, right? Okay, so hard mode sucks, full stop. Hard mode basically places you at the start of a loop, but with only starting gear and no mutations. With the exception of van spawns, pretty much all post-loop changes apply to hard mode, as well as a handful of extra changes to make hard mode a truly painful experience. On top of every normal post-loop change, hard mode also makes it so that the enemy difficulty climbs twice as fast, meaning you get more enemy spawns faster, and the weapon difficulty will climb 50% slower, meaning you get worse weapon drops than you would in a normal run. Enemies will also drop less rads and have a lower drop rate for health pickups. Of course, I thought this sounded too easy, and I decided to play Melting to try and get a golden nuke launcher for some downright silly gameplay in the future. This turned out to be a huge mistake. As it turns out, playing a mode with drastically increased spawns as a character with no health isn't actually a really good idea. The hard mode desert might actually be the worst area in the game. Most of the enemies you'd find in the desert after loop usually aren't that big of a deal, but when you have to deal with 40 HP flies and elite grunts on stage 1 before you even have a solid weapon or mutations to take care of them, things get pretty bad pretty fast. To make matters worse, I found that the most consistent way for me to make it out of the desert was to take Crown of Death with a grenade launcher. This takes my HP down to just 1 HP before mutations, and led to so many of my runs dying embarrassingly to a cross-map maggot from a fly or a telefrag from a giant maggot. For the few runs that made it out of the Desert Suicide Simulator, hard mode eases up a little bit after the sewers before sucking again from the Frozen City onwards. Assuming you'd actually make it all the way to 7.2 though, what's the chance of actually finding one of these guns? Oh no. So assuming you actually push all the way through to 7.2, you only have a roughly 2% chance at any given time to actually find a golden nuke launcher or disc gun. Out of the 1,000 runs I did with Melting, a whopping 3 runs made it into the palace, and out of those 3, only 1 made it into post-loop. After 20 hours spent bashing my head into the wall, I decided that maybe I shouldn't keep trying to do this the way that I was. But what other way is there that I can actually go about this? While it's true that literally any other character would be better for this, there are a handful of characters who have some especially cheesy methods of completing good riddance. As YV, upon reaching level Ultra, you get to go to the crib, and among the golden cars in this weird circular fellow, you'll find 2 giant chests with 24 guns each, which pull from up to 6 difficulties above your level. Open Mind brings this up to 4 chests with a total of 96 guns between all of them, giving you plenty of opportunities to actually pick up a disc gun or nuke launcher. Before we continue though, I just want to touch on how difficulty works a smidge. For the uninitiated, the way the game determines the enemy spawn count and the weapons you find is through the difficulty system. One stage normally equals a +1 to difficulty for both weapons and enemies, and each difficulty adds a few new weapons into the pool and increases the amount of enemies that appear. As I said earlier though, hard mode makes it so that the weapon difficulty climbs slower, making it so that every 3 stages increases the difficulty by 2, meaning we get slower weapon progression. Weapons we would normally find just after looping are now restricted until as late as post-loop Frozen City. Cool? Cool. Moving on. Now, if I were playing optimally, I would have picked up Crown of Death with a golden grenade launcher so I can consistently one-tap elite grunts and that f***ing fly that I hate. However, I thought it would be a little bit counterproductive to go out of my way to get such a specific loadout when there's a 50-50 shot I get a golden weapon that doesn't benefit from Crown of Death in any way. Instead, I opted to just keep using the golden crossbow I've always had with YV, and just hope I get optimal mutations to make up for the difference. YV's passive lets him shoot faster than everyone else, and his active ability lets him shoot multiple times in a single click. So with Scarier Face or Throne Butt, I can pretty easily reach a similar level of damage without many issues. Actually getting into the run, the desert is, as I said before, the worst part of hard mode. The lack of good weapons and lack of mutations kills a lot of runs before they ever really get a chance to find their footing, and my choice of loadout here doesn't serve to help. Of course, it could be worse, it could be playing Melting, but I digress. There are 3 big problems with the desert: the flies, the police, and Big Bandit. The flies confuse me sometimes. In my experience, they either stay really far out and just keep launching maggots at you, which can really be a problem if you have no melee weapon, or, like I did, opted to use an explosive weapon with Melting, or they'll push you incredibly aggressively and chunk you down with contact damage, which is also an issue if you opt for an explosive weapon. Unfortunately though, bombs also happen to be the best way to kill them this early, since with Crown of Death, the extra mini explosions boost your damage just enough to one-shot the flies pretty consistently. Moving on to the IDPD, the biggest issue here is the Elite Grunt. Now, last time I talked about the IDPD, I said that my least favorite was the Elite Shielder for a multitude of reasons, and while I still believe that, I think the Elite Grunt definitely gives him a run for his money. In any normal looped run, usually I'm more than strong enough to deal with Elite Grunts as they spawn in before they actually become an issue. Here though, things are a bit different, and for a while when I first started, I thought they were almost a guaranteed reset if they spawned in on 1-1. The issue isn't necessarily their damage, even though they do hit hard, it's their speed. Elite Grunts move so fast, and move really erratically on top of that. They shoot their gun fast, their rocket attack is fast and basically untelegraphed, and on top of all of that, they have even more health than the flies. Still enough to usually be one-shot by the grenade launcher with Crown of Death, but I'd like to remind you that I don't have that right now. Finally, we have Big Bandit, or should I say bandits, because there are 2 of them. In a looped run, Big Bandit's post-loop power boost usually isn't a huge problem since you can still speed kill him pretty effectively. Unfortunately for me though, when the best I have at my disposal is a golden crossbow and a wrench, these fights can get pretty tricky. My best hope was to get a lucky spawn with a clear, isolated area away from the rest of the enemies, so I could wait for the bandits to spawn and move between cover to try and take them out. Sometimes I could also get lucky with circling them in a more open space, but that was rare and relied on me clearing enough room before they could actually spawn in. Make it through all of that though, and you're in the sewers. The enemy pool isn't that bad here, although there are some dangerous picks like these big red guys and the big gators, but nothing is anywhere near as annoying as Mom can be. Normally, Mom isn't that much of an issue for me, but with weapons as weak as what I have, her high health and minion spawns can be pretty overwhelming. Getting long arms with a melee weapon can make her gas a lot less of an issue, bonus points if you find a shovel, but she's still a pretty big threat and a lot of runs struggle to push through here. Fortunately for me though, this is basically the last troublesome spot of the YV run. The scrapyard, hard mode or not, has always been a pretty big nothing burger location for me. The Ravens can be annoying, the snipers can be dangerous, but generally they just aren't. Hard mode makes it a little bit more challenging with gators and snowbots, but it's less a difference between life and death and more a difference between running on autopilot and thinking about what's actually on my screen. Big Dog can be an issue if I don't have a melee weapon, but generally on runs where I'm missing one, I can find a corner to sit in to take cover in between spins and just chip him down from there. Moving out of the scrapyard, we find the Crystal Caves, which in any other run would be one of my least favorite places to be due to the area's boss, the Hyper Crystal. I've said before how much I dislike this boss. The minion spawns are annoying and get in the way of actually dealing damage. It makes it hard to get in for proper melee usage, so on and so forth. But I think things are different here. This is where the cheese part of the YV strategy comes in. You see, there's one key detail that makes this place important. The Hypercrystal's minions still drop rads, meaning you can farm them infinitely to reach level Ultra before leaving the caves. Coincidentally, the caves are also just far enough in the run for the chest in the crib to be in range of the golden disc and a nuke launcher. For the first time in a really long time, I'm actually excited to be fighting Hypercrystal. My first YV run that made it here died to some admittedly really funny jank. The Hypercrystal came down to this corner, and due to some quirks with how the minions orbit it, one got full-on launched into me and killed me on contact, but fortunately, my very next run made it back here without issue. I would actually recommend having a melee like a sledgehammer if you can, but this is completely doable with 2 guns as long as you get good ammo drops and cycle between the 2 as you run out of ammo. Killing the crystal takes me to the crib, and at this point in the run, I was a little bit nervous. This was coming after 20 hours spent with melting over the past several days. It had taken me a few hours at this point just to get here, and even if the odds were still pretty well in my favor, I was still worried I wouldn't find it and would have to do all of this again. I was also missing open mind, so I only had 2 chests to open. I popped them open, and at first I didn't see anything, until I decided to check the TV. I had it. Now, did I want the disc gun? No, not even slightly. I am terrible with these, but was I happy? Absolutely. Took it out for a spin, died, and admired my achievement for a while before deciding to proto-chest it onto melting so I could feel like I'd done what I set out to do in the first place. Of course, this was a strategy so nice, Vlambeer decided we should be able to do it twice. YV isn't the only character who can do this method, since Cuz is also able to go to the crib if you hit level Ultra. Of course, Cuz doesn't have the same damage output as YV, but he's still pretty strong in his own right. He releases a bunch of tiers like a certain guy from Fortnite, spending a bar from Cuz's tier meter to do so. Taking damage refills a bar, and you have 3 bars total, or up to 6 with back muscle. Tiers can do 3 damage and ignore immunity frames, and can also block enemy projectiles in a similar fashion to a blood explosion, making them a pretty good tool both offensively and defensively. Plus, his passive lets him keep an extra weapon, giving me a little bit more versatility in my loadout. For Cuz, I chose to bring a wrench and let the starter chest give me the rest of my loadout. It took me a little while to get used to having the extra weapon slot, and there were times where I swapped to the wrong gun and ended up screwing myself over, but overall, I think having the extra gun was usually more beneficial than not. His active ability is also really nice and helped pull me out of a lot of really bad situations. My one complaint here though is that it requires you to take damage to be used, but Thrown Butt helps alleviate some of that weakness and lets you restore multiple tiers with 1 tick of damage. His active can also do quite a bit of damage if you stand inside of larger targets since the pellets ignore iframes. The desert sucked, as usual, but I think I'm getting to a point where I can manage it pretty well. I didn't spend nearly as much time here as I thought I would before moving on to the sewer. Having that extra melee slot to keep my melee for this fight was really nice, and overall Mom really wasn't that big of an issue. The scrapyard also wasn't a big deal, and I had already made it back to the crystal caves. I ended up taking a pretty long time here, and since I never found rabbit paws in my mutation pool, I had to improvise with some weapons I found around the floor to actually make it through. Thankfully, I still had more than enough room to reach level Ultra, and I was back in the crib. This time, I actually did find Open Mind early in the run, so I had 4 chests to pull from. I cracked them open and got a golden disc gun again. Unfortunate, but I still have one last trick up my sleeve to try and get a golden nuke launcher. Up until now, we still had to play a decent bit of hard mode to get a golden weapon, but what if we could find one as early as 1-2? Robot turns this idea into a reality thanks to a very niche interaction with his passive ability and a secret weapon, the Gun Gun. Robot's passive lets him find weapons from 1 difficulty higher than what's currently active, and the Gun Gun is able to shoot weapons from up to 10 difficulties higher. At 1-2, with both Robot's passive and the Gun Gun, it is just barely possible to find one of the weapons we're after. This is great, but how are we even supposed to get a Gun Gun this early in the first place? It's pretty cheesy, but if we get a Gun Gun in normal mode and pop it into the proto chest, we can grab it as Robot on 1-2 in the Crown Vault. From there, we take a melee weapon with us so we can farm the Vault Guardian's attacks for ammo pickups, and Robot can eat the guns shot by the Gun Gun to refill on even more ammo. From here, it's just a matter of staying alive while you pray for one of the 2 to drop. So then, we play Crown of Guns to get a Gun Gun, drop it into the proto chest, and then finish it off on hard mode with Robot to hopefully get a golden gun. I don't particularly like playing Crown of Guns that much. I don't love the playstyle of swapping weapons to keep my ammo up, but with Robot, you can mitigate that a bit by munching on the drops. I'm not going to bore you with too many details about my normal mode Robot runs, since this is the hard mode video after all. Played a couple runs to unlock Crown of Guns, looped until I found a Gun Gun, stored it in the proto chest, died, but not before setting a new Robot PB, and prepared myself to go into hard mode for hopefully one last time. My starting loadout might just be the actual worst one yet here. I need a crown to be able to get into the proto chest, but I don't have Crown of Risk yet for more pickups, and my second best choice here is Crown of Destiny. Ugh. I also don't want to go pick up a golden wrench just to replace it again, so I'm sticking with a crossbow and I'm resetting my runs until I find a wrench in the starter chest. After a couple of attempts and maybe a total of 20 runs, I got a run off the ground and found myself in the Crown Vault. I pulled the Gun Gun out of the proto chest and went to go spawn the Guardians, and since my only available weapon at the moment was the wrench, it took me a second to whittle one down so I could actually have room to farm for the other. Crown of Risk would have been nice here, since I could have had the better drop rates, but it's not a huge deal. I'm not at very much risk of dying to the Guardian, so it's only a matter of time before— whoa, that was fast! Only 3 Gun shots before I found exactly what I was looking for. I thought that I would be here for a lot longer, but I am perfectly content to get a 1 in 100 drop in only 3 rolls. So that's it then. Those are the 3 characters, to my knowledge, who are able to cheese their way through Good Riddance and find themselves carrying 2 of the rarest weapons in the game. Now, I can finally rest knowing I don't have to play hard mode anymore, but honestly, it's kind of grown on me. Sure, I wanted to bash my head into the wall when I was playing with melting, but I'm starting to think that was more of a melting issue than a hard mode one. I really started getting into a groove towards the end with YV and Cuz, and I feel like I could just play hard mode sometimes. It still isn't going to be my main pick for when I play by any means, but I can actually see myself playing it for fun rather than for a challenge like this. But anyway, that's gonna be it for now. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions for what challenge I should do or what game I should play next, leave them for me in the comments. I got a ton of positive feedback last time, and I really enjoy hearing from you guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching.